Good day, I'm Dennis Ward. Welcome to APTN National News. We begin in Northern Ontario, where the Nishnawbe Aski Police Service says they are investigating up to 8 arson incidents since January. They happened in Sachigo Lake First Nation, a remote nation in northwestern Ontario. According to police, the incidents have caused more than $1 million in damage. They've arrested 11 youth suspects. Police say so far 10 of the 11 have been charged, and their ages range from 11 to 16 years old. The property lost includes a school bus, 2 trailer homes, a trailer and a shed at a lumber yard, a baseball field stage, and an abandoned home. The suspects cannot be named due to the Youth Criminal Justice Act. The investigation is ongoing. A chief in Ontario has recently been honored by York University with a special honorary degree. Mississauga's of Scugog Island First Nation Chief Kelly LaRocca is one of 6 people who will receive the degree at a convocation ceremony in June. LaRocca has been chief of her nation since 2013. She's not an alumni of York and previously received her undergraduate degree from Western University and her law degree from the University of Windsor. LaRocca says she hopes to continue to raise awareness about how land stewardship can be achieved in new and innovating ways. The recipients are chosen for their leadership and achievements in public service, health, sports, education, and law, and how they've made a lasting impact in their communities. To Manitoba now, where the Southern Chiefs Organization and its Grand Chief Jerry Daniels have filed a defamation suit against journalist Trevor Greyeyes and the news publication Terra Indigena. In their statement of claim filed in Court of King's Bench on May 15th, the plaintiffs alleged 3 articles published in First Nations Voice and/or Terra Indigena's websites between March 3rd and April 25th this year contain what they call untrue and defamatory statements. The claim goes on to say the statements were meant and were understood to mean that SEO Grand Chief Jerry Daniels is, quote, a criminal and is corrupt, and that the SEO condones or is complicit in criminal conduct and is not a legitimate organization. The suit asks for an injunction restraining the defendants from further publishing the allegedly defamatory statements and are compelling the defendants to delete them from the 2 websites. According to the court document, no monetary damages are being sought. None of the allegations have been proven in court, and no statement of defense have been filed. In the early 1970s, some artists got together and formed the Indigenous Group of 7. They had passion to painting images that were important to them in their culture. 6 of the artists have passed since. Now the 7th has curated an exhibit at Banff's White Museum of the group's works over the last 5 decades. CTV's Kevin Fleming has that story.
In the 1970s, Joseph Sanchez was a young artist and today is the last surviving member of the Indigenous Group of 7.
Daphne Ojig, Alex Janvier, Norval Morriso, Jackson Beardy, Carl Ray, Eddie Cobanis, and myself.
Together with Don Sanders Dahl, Sanchez curated an exhibition called The Ancestors Are Talking, paintings by the Indigenous 7.
I think a lot of people weren't aware of the group, to tell you the honest truth. There's a lot of interest in understanding more about the group and their impacts on Canadian art.
Sanchez says while they were all painters, they were also spiritual, and their art reflects that.
Eddie talked about dreaming. That's where he got his inspiration. Daphne talked about peeping over the veil, crossing over and looking at the other dimensions. Norval astral travel to all the dimensions. And me, I've been astral traveling since I was a young boy.
Sanchez says 2 of his friends died young, but the rest of the artists continued to paint for decades. And this exhibit shows their evolution through the years on canvas.
When this group started, the idea was that we were giving our work back to the children, to our people. And ultimately, that didn't happen. There was no funding. There was but each one of us has then inspired younger artists.
They have these important impacts that I think will really help foster the next generation. So we really want to encourage as many people to come, especially local Indigenous youth and artists.
Sanchez says he and other Indigenous artists benefit from having a spiritual connection to their ancestors, and they shouldn't be afraid to explore that in their art. Kevin Fleming, CTV News, Banff.
Back to Treaty 1 territory now, where Indigenous entrepreneurs have a new way to help turn their ideas into thriving businesses.
The main goal is to inspire Indigenous entrepreneurs.
Treaty 1 Development Corporation unveiled a new Indigenous Entrepreneurship Center. It's located in Winnipeg's downtown at Wawanesa Insurance's former head office. Officials say it will offer an array of resources for people to either start or grow their businesses, such as legal and financial guidance, mentorship, and marketing support.
The partnerships, the resources, the mentorship, and the supports, they all exist already. It's just a matter of facilitating and navigating those to bring them all together in one space.
CEO Kathleen Blue Sky says the hope is to eventually open up chapters across the country. Over the long weekend, Yellowknife was treated to a special performance featuring a traditional throat singer all the way from Nunavut. APTN video journalist Bruce De La Cruz has that story.
Olivia Chislett warms up her voice before her first ever performance in Yellowknife. She is an accomplished throat singer and multimedia artist from Iqaluit, Nunavut, with her singing career beginning in unlikely places.
And so when I was a kid, I used to listen to audio tapes of throat singing, little cassette player tapes at my daycare. And I used to, every time there was throat singers on the local television, I would be this close to the screen, my mom would say, and just trying to copy all the sounds that they were doing.
She is performing with local folk and bluegrass artist Lester Slade. Their set includes her throat singing fused with Western styles of music.
Traditional throat songs, so songs that already have like a set rhythm and melody and everything. And I find ways to fit it into Zach's music, or Zach finds ways to fit his guitar into my song. Some of the follower parts that usually would be done by another throat singer, but he's playing his guitar along to them. So.
Olivia describes some of the challenges when blending other genres with throat singing.
Sometimes people will ask me what key something is in, and I have no idea. I just, the way we learn songs is by mimicking what we hear, and so I couldn't tell you what key or what the timing is. It might differ from performance to performance.
She also shares a painful chapter in the history of throat singing, when the practice nearly died out in the early 20th century.
For a long time, it was really demonized by settlers and missionaries, along with a whole bunch of other cultural practices. And so it was almost lost for quite a long time. Anyone who did practice it would have practiced it in secret.
But the art of throat singing has made a comeback. Nunavik style, out of northern Quebec, was given UNESCO Intangible Cultural Heritage status by the Quebec government in 2014.
It started off getting revitalized in Nunavik, I believe, and from there, more and more people were inspired to start bringing it back, to start asking their elders questions, start asking each other questions. It was a lot of just love for the art itself that brought it back.
At the end of the day, throat singing is much more than just an art form for Olivia. It's a rediscovery of oneself.
For me, throat singing is part of proof of what we were and what we are, and things that we lost can be brought back.
Bruce De La Cruz, APTN National News, Yellowknife.
Still to come here, we'll bring you a preview of tonight's Nation to Nation and our In Focus podcast when we come back. Plus, in Prince Edward Island, a Mi'kmaq nation is determined to continue with its treaty fishing despite fishery officers seizing their lobster traps. APTN's Angel Moore is working on this story. Here's a preview.
I'm here in the Lennox Island First Nation, where tensions are high after fisheries officers seized treaty lobster traps on Sunday and pressed charges against one fisherman. Chief Darlene Bernard told APTN News DFO's actions are illegal and the band has already replaced the traps. Bernard says Lennox Island has fished for a moderate livelihood under their own management plan for the last 4 years without incident. I'll have more on the story to come. Angel Moore, APTN National News, Lennox Island, Mi'kmaq Nation.
Welcome back. Talk of separation is all the rage in Alberta. Small groups are breaking out, wanting to leave Confederation. And chiefs from Treaty 6, 7, and 8 are telling Premier Danielle Smith to stand down. What is all this talk about, and could Alberta actually leave Canada? Is the topic of discussion on this week's edition of the APTN News in Focus podcast. Kathleen Martins is sitting down for Sierra Bettens, and she joined Chris and Achkate in studio earlier today. But first, here's a snippet of this week's episode.
The important thing here is that the treaty is a relationship. It's not a transaction, an event that occurred, at one time in the past. It's an ongoing relationship, and it's absolutely, meant to be renewed and to change over time. However, it's not meant to change in a way that renders it less significant or important in terms of how these territories, these particular territories in the prairies, are governed. The treaty is the governing framework.
Thanks so much for joining me, Kathleen. Over the weeks, we've heard the talks of Alberta wanting to separate from Canada. Who did you speak to in the podcast about this week?
Well, I like to go to experts, people who study and teach this subject. So I spoke with 2 First Nations academics in Western Canada, and they turned out to be excellent people. They are very well versed in treaties, which, as you know, don't usually make the news. And my treaty knowledge was pretty wanting. So they turned out to be, and they're interesting to listen to too, the way they talk about it.
Sounds very educational. What were some of the main points that they made about this with regards to treaties?
Well, it's a good and an important refresher, as Alberta does consider separatism, and voting on it. It's important to review history, right? And so that takes us to the treaties. These are very important agreements, and they're also quite powerful because they still hold up today. And that is what I learned from this podcast discussion, was that these agreements that were made between the original peoples and the Crown, which is Canada, no province can separate. Like Quebec learned this in the 80s and 90s, and now Alberta is being reminded that it can't just take its land, put up borders, and say we've succeeded from Canada. These treaties exist outside of that decision, and they were made to share the land in harmony. And certainly there's at least 3 people in this relationship, right? The province, the feds, and First Nations. And the First Nations haven't even been consulted yet by Alberta. So you're going to hear about that in the podcast.
And where does this all go from here, Kathleen?
Well, it's interesting because we're hearing the chiefs, right, from there's 3 treaties in Alberta, 6, 7, and 8, and they have already been vocal about how they haven't been consulted, and hey, Alberta, you can't just take the land that we live on, right? It's our land, we have sovereignty over it, and you need to discuss it with us. And what we're already starting to hear from these chiefs, on top of that reminder to Alberta that, hey, we exist, as do the treaties, is that the chiefs don't necessarily want a separatist vote. And so I think we're going to be hearing, some of the guests talk about that in the podcast, what we're going to be hearing from chiefs going forward, what their next step is.
And lastly, Kathleen, where can people go to hear more about the podcast?
Well, they can go on our website, aptnnews.ca, and you'll see a heading that says podcasts, and they can also find it on any of their favorite players.
Kathleen Martins is this week's host of APTN News In Focus podcast. And once again, you can download the podcast every Thursday from your favorite player, like Kathleen said. Kathleen Martins, thanks so much for being here.
You're welcome, Creason.
Now over to our Ottawa studio where Fraser Needham is standing by with a preview of what's coming up tonight on Nation to Nation.
Coming up after the evening news, Ontario's Ford government continues to push ahead with plans to develop the Ring of Fire. Not all First Nations are on board, though, and Minister of Indigenous Relations Greg Rickford is here to talk to us about it. As well, the Conservatives were unsuccessful in their bid to stop the Liberals from getting a fourth term in last month's federal election. Jamie Schmale continuing his role as critic for Crown Indigenous Relations, and he is here to talk about this and other issues. APTN reporter Karen Pugliese is also here to talk about the drive to develop critical minerals and how this is affecting Indigenous rights. All this ahead on Nation to Nation.
Thanks, Fraser. Now to one of this week's web poll questions. We're asking you, does your community have an emergency management plan for this year's wildfire season? Your choices are yes, no, or not sure. You can log on to our website, aptnnews.ca/polls to weigh in. Coming up after the break, award-winning author David A. Robertson will join us to talk about his new book. Stick around. Welcome back. Here's a look at your current conditions. Sun's out and 9 in Halifax, a sunny 6 in Fredericton, 0 and cloudy in Kuujjuaq, 5 in Nain, cloudy and 11 in Montreal and Val-d'Or. Sunny and 10 in Sault Ste. Marie at this hour. Sun's out and 9 in Ottawa. 9 under sunny skies in Thunder Bay. Sunny and 4 in Kapuskasing. 8 in God's Lake. 13 with the sun out in Norway House. 13 in Winnipeg. Sunny and 11 in Dauphin. Cloudy and 8 in Regina and North Battleford. Cloudy and 8 in Meadow Lake, sunny and 13 in La Ronge. A different story in northern Alberta right now. Rain and 20 in High Level, 17 with showers in Fort Chipewyan. 19 with showers in Edmonton, rain and 16 in Lethbridge. 16 in Vancouver, showers and 23 in Kamloops. 16 with rain in Prince George and Smithers. 9 in Old Crow, a sunny high of 14 right now in Whitehorse. Showers and 14 in Yellowknife, 12 in Norman Wells. +1 in Sax Harbor, cloudy and 2 above in Paulatuck. 3 in Chesterfield, 2 in Arviette, 1 in Whale Cove. 0 with snow in Resolute, 2 in Iqaluit. Prolific writer and 2-time Governor General's Literary Award winner David A. Robertson is back with a new book. His latest release is called 52 Ways to Reconcile: How to Walk with Indigenous Peoples on the Path to Healing. Robertson, who is a member of the Norway House Cree Nation in northern Manitoba, is holding a book launch in Winnipeg tonight, and he joins us now. Thanks so much, David, for being with us, and congrats on the new book here. Legendary broadcaster, journalist Sheila Rogers wrote the book. This is for every Canadian who's asked, what can I do to advance reconciliation? That this is the book you've been waiting for. Can you tell us about 52 Ways to Reconcile?
Yeah, it's a book that I've been working on really for my whole career, in a lot of ways. My work's been focused on reconciliation. Whether I'm talking about it in books or doing public speaking about it. I have the privilege of being able to talk to Canadians all across Turtle Island, and I've learned a lot in that span of time. And it's helped me to understand what reconciliation is, but also the things we need to do. And some of the hesitance that people have, are worried to do something wrong. So this book is a welcoming. It's a guide, but it's really a way to show people a path that we can walk together towards healing, but also to build a stronger community together.
Great idea for a book. Like you say, something that you kind of been working on for a long time. Why did you feel now's the time?
Yeah, I think we're at a point in Canada, in Canadian history, where we can go one way or the other. We have really good momentum right now, though. We've been working on this now for over almost a decade or more. The TRC calls to action was a big turning point for us. And I just feel like this book was a book that helped to maybe give people some ideas, because I think there is sometimes a question of what can I do? People know that they should do something, but what they can do is different. And so this book is laid out as a guide. It's 52 things that you can do every week. Some of them are very simple, like reading an Indigenous comic book or a novel, listening to Indigenous music, or some more complex things, like getting to know more about Indigenous worldviews, actively going out and seeking, a gathering or going to a powwow, just things that we can learn. And for me, like, reconciliation is about coming to an understanding of each other, and through that, a mutual respect. And I think that is really the bedrock of what we need to do for a healing path.
The 52 ways are conveniently listed here on the back of the book. How did you arrive at those?
Oh, well, first of all, there's a big spoiler to put them all in the back. I just was thinking, like, one day when I thought about the book, I thought, well, I need to come up with 52 things. That seems like a lot. And so I just spent a day just jotting down every single idea I could have on an action. And at the end of the day, I think I had about 90 or so. So it was organizing it properly. It was looking at the ones that are most doable, and the ones that made most sense. And so most of the things that you can do, it's really like a choose your own adventure. You can open it up into any week and do it in any week you want. There's very few actions that are tied to a specific day, like the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation. There are things that you can do on that day. Otherwise, it's like, read a book any week, or my favorite is actually write your own action and then do it, and so it's giving Canadians, with all the stuff that they've learned so far in this book, now think of your own thing to do. And so it makes them a more active participant, which I think is the end goal of what we want to get to.
90 plus ways, so the sequel's already planned out.
Yeah.
Like you say, not to spoil the end, but the 52nd way to advance reconciliation is to share this book. What are your hopes on how it can lead to understanding and healing?
Well, I think that's just what it is. What we get from the knowledge that we accrue through the books that we read or the people that we talk to, the relationships that we build. It is sharing what we've learned, and in sharing what we've learned, we teach other people a little bit more. And I think that we're all teachers, and anything that we say or do, we're teaching somebody something. And that teaching can be productive or it can be unproductive. I think that being a productive teacher and teaching something valuable to somebody, especially when it comes to reconciliation, is a really good step forward.
David, I don't know where you find the time. Appreciate you pulling yourself away from the typewriter for a few minutes to join us to talk about the book. And an amazing idea. Good luck with the book launch tonight as well.
Thanks, appreciate it.
That is all the time we have for your first look at today's news. You can stay up to date with the latest by visiting our website, aptnnews.ca. I'm Dennis Ward, Marcy McGuitch. Thanks for being with us. I will see you back here at 6 p.m. Eastern Time. Have a great afternoon.